Using daily clocking schedules, you can create multi-shift roster for the staff. Multi-shift roster are purpose for staff expected to deliver more than one shift per day. To create a multi-shift roster after you have created the daily clocking schedule inside the system, click on the group duty roster and click Add Duty Roster. Insert the ID of the clocking schedule that you are going to assign to this multi-shift roster. Enter name of the roster, and select your roster as a shift roster. Press OK to be directed to the shift roster created by the system. Now to have more than one shift in your group duty roster, click Edit, and increase the number of shifts per day in the clocking group duty roster. You can have a maximum of up to 3 shifts a day for your employees to follow. After you are done creating and adding group duty roster, go to the Auto Schedule, select the day type, and for each of the day type you can select the shift that should be assigned to that roster. You can select different clocking schedule per day, and the rotation can be saved for up to 30 days for daily clocking schedule for shift rosters. Assign employees to these multi-shift roster and proceed with other settings of TCMS v3. The third clocking schedule type that can be configured in TCMS v3 is Flexi clocking schedule. By using a Flexi clocking schedule, employees can maintain flexible work hours. To create a Flexi clocking schedule, click on the clocking schedule, add clocking schedule, insert the schedule ID and insert the name of the clocking schedule before selecting the working schedule as Flexi. Inside the Flexi clocking schedule clocking time, you do not need to set any in or out times because by using the Flexi clocking schedule, the system will calculate the total work hour based on the out time minus the in time. However, the system permits employees to enter a reference time for each of the clocking column inside the Flexi clocking time tab. Setting this time does not mean that the employee can receive any short time, late in and early out time. For the flexible clocking schedule, the break time can be defined at the Flexi break time in minutes. The rounding rules inside this clocking schedule is similar to what we have seen at weekly and daily clocking schedule before. There is no range tab available in the clocking schedule settings of Flexi clocking schedule. The general settings of the Flexi clocking schedule are slightly different in comparison to the daily and weekly clocking schedules. The first setting is to capture the first and last records as attendance. By selecting this option, the system will automatically take the first and the last clocking of the user to get the calculation for the total working hour. And if there is any clocking activities done between the first clocking and the last clocking of the user, the system will ignore those. You can specify 3 pairs of clocking in Flexi clocking schedule. If you want the system to display only 1 pair of clocking inside the Attendance tab, you can set this option to 1. The next rule in Flexi clocking schedule is to enable or disable the workload settings. To use this option, you need to first create workload in TCMS v3 and in the device. You can create workloads at the workload buttons here. The next general rule that you can set inside the Flexi clocking schedule is the maximum work hours to be considered as the same workday. This applies when an employee reports to work late night and the work hours are extended until the next day. Hence, the company needs to specify the maximum work hours to be considered as the same workday. For example, if an employee starts to work at 10 p.m. and has to fulfill 8 hours of work, you can specify 8 or 9 as the maximum work hours in this column to ensure that when he clocks out the next day, it will be considered as the same working day. Separation hours between an out-clocking and subsequent in-clocking to qualify for next day. Following the previous rule, you need to specify the duration between an out-clock-out and an in-clock-in. For example, if a security guard clocks out at 6 a.m. and you set this time to 6 hours, the hours specified in this column will define his rest time before he can clock in again for the next working day. This option is available to ensure that the security guard has taken enough rest before starting his next shift. The next option is the last clock out time to be considered as the same workday as displayed. This option is recommended for the last clock out time after midnight. For the late night shift that extends to the next day, the last clock out time allows the company to define the time as the same workday. For example, if you set this time to 8 a.m., any clocking done until 8 a.m. the next day will be considered as the same working day and will not fall for the next day attendance. double punch for consecutive clock-in and a clock-in slot if it is within minutes of. For example, if this option is set to 15 minutes, within this defined period, only one clock-in data will be taken even though an employee clocks in multiple times. Hence, if an employee clocks in at 9 a.m. and the time is set to 15, all his verifications done within the next 15 minutes will be dismissed by the system and only the first clocking is to be considered for attendance. And that wraps up the general rule setting of the Flexi clocking schedule. The rounding rules of the Flexi clocking schedule are similar to other types of clocking schedules. Therefore, we will skip the rounding rules and move on to the break rules.